And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to PreneurCast.
Yeah, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Gosher.
how well did that go down?
Talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMarketing.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of PreneurCast with me, Dom Goucher, and him, Pete Williams.
Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 110, which is very, very exciting.
Indeed, we hit the 100 mark quite a few weeks ago now. We're also up to weekly episodes again, which is excellent. I'm really pleased that we're managing to maintain that, both the content with me and Pete, and also the interviews and conversations with authors and other interesting people. It's
been great, and particularly over the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 weeks, looking at the stats, I've had a huge jump in listeners, which is fantastic. So to all long-term listeners and all new listeners, welcome to the show. Thank you for playing along and enjoying and leaving comments and feedback and all that sort of fun stuff. It's been great.
Indeed, welcome one and all, new and old. Before we jump into this week's topic, which is all about our social media practices, how we actually deal with that great behemoth and scary thing that is social media. Just a quick kind of update on the week. Pete, what have we been up to this week?
Oh, look, lots going on this week. I guess the latest thing that I've been enjoying is Ryan Holiday's new book, friend of the show, past guest, referrer of many guests, and just a downright awesome dude. He's got a new book out called Growth Hacker Marketing, a primer on the future of PR, marketing, and advertising. So this is his follow-up to Trust Me, I'm Lying, which is one of my favourite books of last year. And this is done through Penguin. It's what's being termed a Penguin special. It's a short book, only about 56 pages. And Penguin are sort of doing these sort of smaller, sharper, pointier books, which is very exciting.
Is that a physical book or a digital book, or what is that?
So right now it's only available on Kindle. I think it's also available in a few other sort of digital platforms. And then if it sells well, they'll then turn into a print book, which is, I think, a very smart play for a lot of publishers these days to actually go that route of doing a digital book. And if it seems to sort of catch on, then go and do the audio version and the physical book version. I think it's a much smarter way from a publishing perspective, which is super cool. So available as of right now on Amazon.com and where other good digital books are sold.
Indeed, and just because it's in, as you say, Kindle format doesn't mean you can't read it on whatever. The Kindle platform is actually available for pretty much any physical device there is.
Well, that's the thing. It was actually, this is a stat I found out recently having lunch with Ed, another friend of the show, that more Kindle books are read on the iPad than on Kindle devices themselves.
Oh wow!
Now, this is the stat is backed up by a latte over lunch, so I don't know the real source of this, but I'm pretty sure that's an absolute fact, and I think that's amazing. So if you do have an iPad Mini or something like that, make sure you download the Kindle app because it's a great way to read Kindle books. A lot of people don't even know that's possible, which I found very surprising. That's how I read all my Kindle books, is just on the iPad.
Yeah, me too. I love the fact that whatever it is, whether it's the whichever iPad or whatever I've got, or an actual Kindle device, or even my desktop, it works out. It remembers where I am, and I can pick each one up and carry on. It's actually a great digital ebook reader. You don't have to download the Kindle books to it. But
read.amazon.com is a website, obviously as part of Amazon's network, that you can go to and actually read Kindle books that you own just through your web browser. It's fantastic.
Indeed. Cool. And just to not digress too far into the technology and miss the point of the book, Ryan, who was the author of Trust Me, I'm Lying, which we found a truly awesome book and quite a revelation about using modern technologies and modern platforms to market. He's a bit of a different thinker, so I would imagine that the Growth Hacker, even though it's only a short book, is a pretty interesting read, right?
Yeah, basically he breaks down some of the bigger brands the last few years, mostly tech online brands, that have done some amazing stuff without traditional advertising budgets. So Evernote, Facebook, Airbnb, obviously Gmail, those sort of tools that have grown to be, multi-million, multi-billion-dollar brands in some instances. How did they get to that position without actually doing traditional advertising and marketing? Now, this is the type of stuff that we term and talk about here on the show quite a bit, preneur style marketing. It's kind of been tagged as growth hacker marketing. And I personally really think that that name is not right. I don't like the name growth hacker marketing personally. I just think that is just smart business. But obviously, it needs to have a bit of a hook to sort of be a topic of conversation around the water cooler. So it's a really good, interesting book about how he breaks down how these brands actually did it, what they actually did to actually structure their product. Dropbox, is a good example that they obviously grew their business by getting other people to actually use Dropbox. My use of Dropbox is only enhanced when you use Dropbox. It's how we actually share the recordings of the show and a whole bunch of stuff we work on together. So, people argue that was a bit of a growth hacker move by Dropbox to actually, grow their brand, grow their business without traditional marketing by getting people to share Dropbox. But to me, that's just part of the business, part of the product itself. They still have to do some form of marketing, and I think there's a bit of a grey area. So I might even try and get Ryan on the show in the future to sort of talk about this and have a nice little heated debate around sort of what is growth hacking and what is just smart business and what is product development versus marketing and advertising. I think there's a lot of grey area that sort of Silicon Valley are kind of just, they love their buzzwords, and I think this is kind of one of them to a certain extent. I think the principles that he talks about absolutely hold true and should be applied by everybody. But just to sort of label them as growth hacker marketing, I think is a little bit misleading. That's my own personal opinion.
I think though any of these terms get hijacked.
True.
Whatever you do. But no, absolutely. I mean, getting Ryan on again to talk about this would be super cool. So with your newfound star status, I'm sure you can reach out.
Easy. Well, speaking of, Facebook and Twitter and all these sort of social media platforms that have grown through growth hacking, I guess that is the topic of conversation we're going to chat about today.
That's right. The last couple of weeks, we've finished off our list of questions from our live Q&A session, which was what we did during our 100th show. And folks, if you haven't listened to that 100th show, we got a lot of great feedback on it because we got people to basically either send in their questions or part of a live webinar ask questions that they like burning questions about their business or about our business. But we had so many questions that we had to do another show to answer the rest of them. But there was one that we thought, and it was from Maria, and Maria asked us about how we actually go about doing our social media. Now, we did talk about it a little bit on that kind of wrap-up Q&A show. But we thought it was definitely worthwhile just really focusing a show on it because it is one of those topics, in whatever line of business you're in, you're either probably being told by people that you should be doing social media or you're already doing it, but you may be like somebody who asked another Q&A question, maybe not sure if you're doing it right in inverted commas. So maybe if we talk about how we do it and why we do it that way, hopefully that's going to help you guys out. So that's really what we're going to talk about this week. Okay?
Love it. Sounds good.
So the first thing, Pete, I'd like to say this because this is the thing. The first thing is I'd like a clear definition for anybody that may have not suffered the onslaught in the last few years. I'd like to just clarify the definition of what social media is and what some examples of the kind of tools and platforms and things that social media come under the heading.
Sounds great. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. For me, I'll go with the technical definition. For me, the technical definition of social media or a social media platform is any platform where you and other people can post information and also find other information from other people. But the big thing, and the definition of the word social, it comes from the idea that you can indicate whether or not you like that information, whether you found that information valuable, and that you can share that information either with other people on that platform or across other platforms. So an example of that would be YouTube. YouTube is a classic is a classic, to me, social media platform. It's not what a lot of people wouldn't, first port of call for social media, most people would say either Twitter or Facebook. But YouTube is a very clear example, because what it is it's a platform for you to share content. You can upload videos. It's a platform for you to find content. You can search for and find other stuff. You can follow people on YouTube. You can subscribe to their channel. And if you watch a video, below the video, you have all kinds of buttons to do all kinds of things. Like you can tick a thumbs up, say you like it. You can leave a comment. You can also share it or embed it or do all manner of things. So that to me really is the epitome, the real definition of social media. What do you think about that, Pete?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, social media, again, to me, it's a bit of a buzzword like growth hacker, in that, there is a lot of grayness around it. A lot of people sort of think, it's refined to Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook and Twitter. They're probably the four big ones people think of when people start talking about social media. But it does go a lot broader than that, and you can you could probably almost push a blog and a forum almost under social media in the true sense of the definition. In terms of, you can leave comments, you can interact, you can do a whole bunch of stuff on forums and things like that. But we won't probably take our conversation in that direction today. But that's sort of to the true extent of the term, that is what it really should be.
Yeah, and as you say, it's like you can really get picky about it, but the point is that we do what we do on the platforms that we use. So, and that's what we're going to talk about. But I just thought it was worthwhile just giving anybody an idea of, where the term social media comes from and why they call it social media before we dive into it.
And I think this is something really important too. This is my perspective around a lot of things, and I'm sure long-term listeners have probably hopefully had this ground into them by now. Is that just because social media is a buzzword and everyone still talks about social media doesn't mean you have to use it. Look, in our B2B businesses, in the telco, in the e-com stuff that we do in the B2B space, we don't do social media. We do YouTube because it allows us as a platform to host the videos that we have on our product pages. So we use YouTube not as a social media platform, we use it as a video hosting platform. And this is the thing too, is that, just because YouTube can be a social media tool doesn't mean you have to use it that way. So we use it to host our videos, but we don't have an active Twitter account. We don't have an active Facebook account. We don't do Pinterest for our B2B businesses because our target market is not there. No one, wanting a phone system is really going to be looking on Twitter. It's not that sort of platform for that conversation, for that target market, that audience. Yes, there is a lot of arguments around using social media in your business to help with SEO. And that's probably a slightly different conversation about, not gaming these platforms, but using these platforms in a way to help your search engine ranking. So using it as a tool to drive something else. But if you're using social media for the sake of social media, make sure your audience is there and get an idea of why they're there to actually ensure that you actually communicate to them in the right way. That's probably a really big thing.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to something that you said before, which is, go where the hungry crowd is. There's no point just doing it for the sake of doing it, right?
Yeah, and I think this is a big problem, is a lot of people feel like they have to have a Twitter account and they have to have a Facebook page. So they go there and create these things, and then they lose sight of the objective of why they're using these tools. And that's a big issue, I think, for a lot of people.
I think it's a real source of the actual confusion out there, because if you are doing it because someone said you should do it, then you don't actually have your own strategy, right?
I think it comes back to the episode we had early on in our series. I think it was probably one of the first 10 or 15 episodes, I think, from memory, was this whole thing around the Marketing Symphony and applying that to tools you use. And I think that sort of is worth touching on really quickly here to sort of just give people the context of the different ways they can use these tools. Because I think the Marketing Symphony is something that's very, very important for people to actually understand and really use as a filter for using things like social media.
Okay, I think it's definitely worth it. I do think, as I said, I think that there is this issue that people are doing things for the sake of doing them, and therefore they don't have a strategy. And yes, certainly those are, something that we talk about all the way through, in a lot of our shows are these frameworks that you can use to evaluate whatever it is you're doing, whether you're making a product or choosing to move into a new platform or building a business or whatever it is. So I think that's a great thing to do.
So really quickly, the Marketing Symphony is market research, traffic, conversion, product. They're the 4 key things that you need to go through to start a business, to develop a business, that everything kind of falls into one of those 4 categories as you're running and marketing a business. And, we won't go crazy in depth in this. Obviously, there's a whole episode on that earlier, and you'll be able to check the show notes at PreneurMarketing.com once we publish this episode to actually, find that episode and listen to that past one. But, if you look at market research, social media can be used very, very well as a market research tool. You can go to Twitter, you can search for keywords, you can put in hashtags and find out what the market, what the audience, what the conversation is around your particular brand, your particular area of interest, the problems you solve. And you can do a lot of market research on these platforms. You can go to YouTube and find out what people are talking about. It's a great tool for doing market research. They're also great tools for getting traffic back to your main website, back to your offer, whatever it might be, a sales page, a request a quote page, a funnel, whatever it might be. You can, advertise, you can do posts on things like Facebook, you can do graphics on Pinterest, you can, tweet, obviously quite regularly to drive traffic back to a particular place on the web. It's a great tool. Conversion, these tools are not really conversion tools. They're conversation tools. So you can't really necessarily easily convert someone like you can with a sales letter. So social media isn't really a conversion tool. So to try and use it as that will not work. And, historically, I think even if you go back to the Marketing Symphony episode, I sort of spoke about it not being a product tool. You can't really use Facebook as a product. Yes, you can do private groups. That could be one way you can facilitate a mastermind group, which you charge for if you're in that information sort of space. You could do a private closed Facebook group, and that could be your product as a way to sort of use the platform to deliver a product. Pinterest, probably not really a product tool. You can't really do anything on Pinterest. But, you could also use customer support, like, HostGator, and a lot of platforms use Twitter as a customer support tool. And it's a great way to sort of tie in the social media with your product, in that it's a great, easy way to communicate with your prospects and your clients and answer questions that way. So that's kind of another way you can use it. So there's sort of some very high-level, broad ways to use social media in line with that Marketing Symphony, which I think is a really important framework a lot of people really understand and look at.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that you said up front is the most important one, which is that you need to look at it from the point of view of, where is the value to you? Is it a platform that your customers or potential customers use or are using? Because if it's not, it's just diluting your focus.
That's the thing, and look, I'll put my hand up and say, I don't use Facebook that well. Like, we've done some Facebook ads which work really, really well, but that's, this is I think where people get confused, is like advertising on Facebook is not social media to me. It's advertising to an audience. So putting ads on the right hand side of Facebook, or even putting ads inside someone's news stream, that is advertising 101. It's not social media. Having a Facebook page which you get people to interact with and do posts on, that's social media marketing. And that's something that if you go to our Facebook page, you'll know that we don't do that well, because it's a distraction. We have that plot of land there with our name and our brand just to sort of, ensure that no one else does anything with that. But we aren't proactively with it because it's not a focus. It's not a great measurable tool, in my opinion.
Yeah. And another example that you said earlier was, for example, YouTube. YouTube has this facility, but I certainly, I use YouTube and use YouTube as first and foremost an online video hosting platform, and it's absolutely great for that. The fact that it has all these extra social media capabilities isn't particularly relevant to our strategies right now. It's going to be relevant with my new magazine that I'm pushing forward, because that magazine's all about online video. So I'd better be doing what I'm saying other people should do, and be obvious about it with that, with that one business arm. But in general, it's predominantly for us a hosting platform, and secondarily, it just happens to be pretty good for giving you search engine results. So it generates traffic in a lot of cases, or potentially it could generate traffic in a lot of cases through the search engines. But we're not really, and we'll come back to this when we talk about how we use these things, but we're not really using that platform again in its full social media context. We have, we advertise on it because it's an excellent advertising platform. We do have videos on it that we use for hosting, and we do take the benefit from the search engine. But do we put a lot of effort into the conversational side and the sharing and liking and stuff like that? No. And again, that's to do with the audience for the businesses that we're looking at, and the dilution of that effort.
Exactly. So should we sort of move away from strategy and actually give people kind of some tactical sort of stuff in terms of if you are working through this and have found the strategy for your particular business, some implementation tips and some actual tactics about, if you're going to do a Twitter account, a question we had recently was, should I do it in my own name or should I do it in my business name? How do I sort of tactically implement this sort of stuff? Should we go down that angle for a little bit, do you think?
Yeah. And just to be clear, folks, you may or may not already have realized this, but anybody that goes out there looking for me, there's not an awful lot to find. Because I'm a behind the scenes guy. Not me and social media don't get on. From that effort point of view, I don't have anything that I need to get that return from by putting all that effort into social media. So my use of social media is actually the genuine kind of one-on-one, more social with friends and family inside of a private Facebook kind of things, that kind of thing. Whereas Pete, you have a lot of experience of using this for business. Now I consult on using it for business, so I'm going to come in from that angle. And I'll hopefully add a little bit of value where I can. But I think a lot of the we do this stuff, Pete, is going to come from you because you've got that real world experience. The one thing I will say is, watch out, folks, because with this new magazine, with this new project that I'm working on, that's all going to change. I now have a platform and a business that I need to use. My target market is on all of these places, and I'm going to be implementing literally what we're talking about today. That's all going to come out, and you're going to see it happen. So it's probably well worth following along with that once that gets off the ground, and you can see it happen live.
Awesome. So let's go through some stuff. Let's actually dive into some stuff. Now, let me answer the question I just raised in terms of, should you be doing this as your own brand, or should you be doing it as a business? Should I be tweeting as myself or as a business? And I think it comes down to who do you want to be the presence? If you're trying to be a business bigger than you, it comes back to the same stuff I spoke about in my first book, How to Turn Your $1 Million Idea into a Reality, in that, naming a business, Pete Williams and Son, or whatever it might be, my own name, it's very dangerous if you're trying to actually grow the business beyond you. If all you want to do is have and be self-employed, and have that sort of type mentality, that's fine. Name the business after you, name the Twitter account after you, name the social media stuff after you, because it's about you and your brand. And that's great for the ego, but not necessarily great for the bank balance and the lifestyle you're trying to achieve. And what I mean by that is that, to grow a business beyond you, you have to get out of the business. And if you're stuck being the face of the business, it's very, very hard to get out of that business. So if you are trying to build something to be bigger than you, definitely use the social media platforms as the business. For example, a good friend of ours, Jen Sheehan, she has a couple of Facebook and Twitter accounts. She has FB Ad Labs, which is her Facebook advertising business. So she does that as a service, a fantastic service. So she has the Twitter account around that business. So when she talks about business-related stuff, she does it through that account. So that way, as the business grows, she can have other staff and other team members managing that social media platform for her business. She also has her personal account because she wants to be social and personal on that platform as well. And that is completely irrelevant to her business stuff. She might sort of talk about entrepreneurial things, that's who she is as a person. But as her business and as her brand, two very distinct Twitter accounts. And I think that's a much smarter way to go about it.
Well, Jen was actually the first person that I spoke to that really clarified that division of business brand versus personal brand. And the example she gave was in exactly in the use of her Facebook profiles. She, as always, everyone that advises, your Facebook profile, your account, the thing you actually log into and log in as, that should be, she says, that should be you and your family and your close friends. In fact, I believe that she said the thing she said to me was, if you wouldn't invite them round to your house, don't have them as a friend on Facebook. And then she has this Facebook page, which is her business persona, the Jen Xian business person, the public face of Jen Xian, and that's how she communicates as that personal person. And she's quite open about things on that page, about what she's doing in her life and things like that, where she's traveling and things like that. But then all these other brands that she has, you said FB Ads Lab, which is one of her brands for her consulting and services arm for the help that she gives people with the Facebook advertising and things like that. That has its own page, and that's completely separate to Jen. And that comes back to your point of she's built this business that it's associated with her, but it's not her. So if she so chose, like in the book Built to Sell, she wanted to put it in a box and sell that as a going concern, then there's no difficulty in separating it from her and her persona, right?
Exactly. But even if you don't want to sell it, it's even just want to hire some staff to run it for you. That's important. Yeah. Like a lot of really great brands, you'll see that when you go to their Twitter page, they actually have 4 or 5 names in a background graphic with a little sort of little asterisk EV, for example, for a person's initials. So when they tweet on behalf of the business, they put star EV in the tweet. So you kind of know that there's a person behind that still, but it's actually as the brand, which I think is really important, having that differentiation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we when we talked about this recently, there's lots of people out there on the different platforms. If it's important and if you feel that your audience needs to know that there's a human there, this is an individual, then that's a great way to do it. To just indicate with some initials or something, that's the person that's posted into the brand account. But a lot of brands don't. A lot of brands just have posts coming out on these different platforms in their brand account, like central Twitter account. Like you said, HostGator has one. Yep.
My personal preference, as from an advice perspective, though, is to actually personalize it inside that. So have the HostGator should have the HostGator account. But I really do personally believe they should actually at least put a name or an initial against every tweet, just because I think that does personalize that business a lot more. So that's the implementation advice I would give, is do it as a brand, but have real world people identifying themselves as the social media poster, for want of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that one of the local businesses here that I help out is a local dive school. The guys over at, so I'll just give them a shout out because I like, they're my friends, a gang called Rivermar. And what Rivermar do is that they have a Rivermar a Facebook page, which is the central account for Rivermar. That's all the news. But each of their dive instructors is such a character, such an individual. They're actually really well known. They're personalities in their own industry, as it were. All the clients that come to the dive school, they get on with them so well that people want to follow along with them individually. So they have Facebook pages that are like Andy at Rivermar. So that they're connected to the business. They've taken that personalization and a personal association with the business to that level. It's a Facebook page that indicates that they are a person at the company, which is another way to do it.
Mm. Very, very cool. Well, the next thing I think that I know a lot of people ask about, and we talk about a bit, we sort of spoke about it inside the Profit Hacks program that we sort of were doing late last year, is the whole automation and systemization of your social media, in terms of when you tweet, it automatically posts to your Facebook account, and when you add a photo, it then goes to Instagram, and have all this sort of network of automation. And I want to get your take on that, Dom, because I think my take has shifted a little bit recently, and I'll explain why in a moment. What's your thoughts on the automation and systemization of using places like IFTT.com or places like that to sort of have all that stuff happening in an automated sort of fashion?
Do you mean from an incoming or outgoing point of view?
Well, from an outgoing perspective, in terms of, like every time I actually let me give you the example. What we had set up recently was every time I would do a new blog post over at PreneurMarketing.com, it would automatically go and send a tweet, and it would automatically go and post on Facebook. They were sort of two very low level automation type things we had in place, so that way I didn't have to go to social media and actually do the post. It would happen automatically, and that was working exceptionally well. And I think it still can work exceptionally well if you be smart about it. But what we did recently is obviously do a whole bunch of changes to PreneurMarketing.com, new theme, new skin, new setup, a whole new website basically, merged the old website where the podcast used to live into PreneurMarketing.com. So we've got one core place for all that sort of stuff. But what happened is obviously as part of that merging of the sites, we had to go and backdate a whole bunch of old 110 or so episodes of PreneurCast onto PreneurMarketing.com. So even though we were backdating that post for 6-12 months ago, that had then automatically published out to my Twitter feed. So I basically spammed in a weird sort of way our Twitter followers and our Facebook pages because of that automation. And that was a bit, well, hang on, here's sort of the downside of systemization a little bit, which was interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean that was something that I think if you'd have thought it through, you possibly could have avoided that just by switching that linking off. But yeah, I mean the thing is, again, it's where are your audience, and what is the importance of the platform to you? Yeah. If your primary audience is focused on Facebook, then the last thing you want to do is automate any kind of posting.
Exactly.
Or even potentially outsource any kind of posting to that platform.
Yep.
Because people will smell a rat. There was actually, I was reading some Twitter stuff the other day, and somebody actually commented on it on Twitter. They said, if you're having somebody post for you on your Twitter account, please be honest about it so that I know I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
There was actually a straight out comment on Twitter. It was a relatively well-known person commenting just commenting in general. I think it's a fair point. People want to believe that it's you and your content. If that's the primary platform, whatever it is, then you want to be doing it directly. If you want to have a presence on these platforms for whatever reason, then that's a different matter, and you can either you can automate it to a point, and but the strategy really, it's very difficult to say any one given strategy to automate, to not automate. So it's better to say, give some evaluation terms in my mind. And that evaluation is, where are your audience? Are they focused in one place, in which case that becomes the place that you put stuff. And also, what's the benefit to you in being on these other platforms? For example, if you're looking for search engine ranking, search engine traffic, then this week and possibly today's particular advice might be, to focus your high value content on your blog, and to direct people to your blog, and to get people to pay attention and spend time on your blog or your website or whatever, if you're generating enough content. And to be honest with you, I don't think that advice is ever going to change. So what you don't want to necessarily be doing is just auto posting little messages to your blog saying, I just posted something on Twitter, or I just liked a video on YouTube. That kind of stuff can get really annoying on other platforms.
I think the example I would give in terms of someone who sort of does that relatively well, in terms of has a presence on a social media platform but doesn't actually use the social media platform, is Seth Godin and Twitter. Now, obviously, Seth's got his blog where he writes quite regularly, and he has a Twitter account, or at least he used to, and I'm sure it's still active, called This Is Seth's Blog. That's the Twitter account. And all it does is update when Seth writes a new blog post. So he's not trying to, say to anyone, this is me, I'm going to interact with you on social media or anything like that. Is literally it's a social media platform account that people can follow if that's where they choose to get the updates when Seth posts something. So it's purely just a feed of information saying, yep, Seth's done a new blog post. So if you are a Twitter person, that's where you want to be as an audience member. You can subscribe to that Twitter feed and be updated when Seth writes a new blog post. So you go back to Seth's blog to consume that content. And I think that is a very smart way of having a presence on these platforms so your audience can follow you, quote unquote, on that platform that they choose, but the context and the frame has been set correctly. You're not trying to bamboozle anybody and, say to them that I'll be, replying to your messages and DMing people and stuff like that. This is purely a distribution platform to allow those who want to follow along on Twitter do so. And that's sort of, if you want to do that on Facebook, that's where I think the automation stuff can work really, really well, is if you set the context that, hey guys, this is just a distribution of information feed. It's not a conversation tool. And I think that can cause issues if you don't set that context correctly and set those expectations for your audience. But I think that is a smart way of doing it, is, doing that sort of stuff as a tool, as a way to sort of have a presence somewhere without being overly active in that place.
Yeah, well, there's no surprise that Seth Godin, who's an incredibly sharp and smart guy, is doing something sharp and smart. But that is an excellent example, and I think that wraps up a lot of the points that we're trying to make, which you're pretty good at doing, because there's another bunch of people that do that. In fact, I know a lot of people. Our friend Dan Rain, who runs the Immediate Edge, which is a great kind of site about all things internet marketing-y, search engineering-y, and stuff like that. He's a great student of this stuff as well, and has got some very clever ways of doing things. But their website, even though it's a membership site, so it's a closed site, so you kind of have to log on to find out if they've updated it. So they solved that problem by having a Twitter account called Edge News. And they do exactly what you said about Seth. It's like, this account is just to tell you when we post something in our membership area. And it's a fabulous use of that technology. It's quite, they make it clear, they frame it properly, as you said, they frame it properly. This is it's an automated thing. Don't chat to us on this. It's a notification platform. And that is a good understanding of, again, understanding your audience. Their audience is on Twitter. Their audience has the technology or the techniques to keep an eye on Twitter. And therefore, it's a very easy way to notify their audience in a non-interruptive way that they've got some content for them to go and look at. And it keeps people going back to the site. Now, you could just as easily do that with an open website that you've put a new blog post on if you're regularly updating. Because that idea of getting people to come and pay attention to something you just posted is quite a challenge. It's a form of traffic generation. It might be just reminding an existing audience, but it's a form of traffic generation that's quite important. So, but it's a good way, it's understanding a platform and how you can use it and how your audience uses it. So that's cool. But that bridges me across to something that we talk about a lot, certainly inside of Preneur Platinum, when we do our spotlights, particularly the website reviews, because there's the other side of the coin of traffic from social media, which is where people are misusing, in my humble opinion, social media badges on their website. You'll see this. You'll see, because a lot of people, use WordPress, which we've talked about a few times, which is an excellent way to get your website up and running. And they use a theme, which you like my little analogy of a theme being like the Barbie doll clothes that you can just swap the look of a website out. But a lot of these themes that you'll see, people have put social media buttons on them. And they're in the top right-hand corner, which is prime real estate. And because they're there, you fill out your details. And so you've got a little icon that says, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all these things. And so this is basically your website that is potentially your prime real estate. You want people to come to it and read your articles. And there's a big glaring thing in the top right-hand corner saying, please leave my site. Please go away from my site. Please go somewhere else.
I'll click on this link and go to Facebook.
Yeah, click on this link and go to Facebook where there's a less concentrated version of what I'm doing, and you won't read my website anymore kind of thing. To me, we've said this before, it's a really backwards way of getting a benefit from social media. Unless your primary audience and your primary communication channel is one of these other platforms, you really don't want to be sending people to them and away from what should be, away from where all your content is. There's nothing wrong with having little buttons for people, people who are digging around and do that word that I hate, which is that designers use, which is discovery. People are discovering things, and they discover the buttons down the bottom of your website, and they discover you've got a Facebook page, and they really want to follow you on Facebook. Good for them. But unless those platforms are your primary platform, you really don't want to have them front and center or top right, big bright colors, big arrows pointing at them saying follow us on, because it's not really what it's about. What those platforms are about, as the example of Seth's, this is Seth's blog or Edge News and all these other Twitter accounts. It's about capturing people where they're visiting, where they're paying attention, and drawing their attention to your main platform. Yeah?
Yeah, well, this is something that actually happened just recently with the new design and development of PreneurMarketing.com, is that the first rollout of the site actually had the very top first part of the website was the Preneur Marketing logo, then links to the RSS, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, and LinkedIn. They were the very top of the website. And, I very quickly made that change because people were coming to the site, obviously doing, listening to the show, to get the show notes or reading a good blog post, whatever it might be. They come to the site, and the very first thing they'd see at the top of the page is to go off and play on Facebook and YouTube and get distracted. And that's not the outcome. We want people to actually consume the content, get some great value, and then go, you know what? I want to connect with Pete and the team. So we've moved that bar. It's still on the site, but it's actually below the comments and below the post. So, once they've actually consumed and engaged with us, then they have the choice to see, hey, we're on some social media platforms and you can follow us. Because if they do go to Twitter and get distracted before they actually click, follow, at least they've kind of had some interaction with us and will come back again because of good content, because of, good quality, whatever it might be. So it's that second tier type scenario, putting those sort of things on a thank you page is a great way to say, hey, you've already taken the action we want. Now let's, stick together as well. Let's go out for coffee again in the morning type scenario.
Great. That's a really good example, actually, of where it is a good idea to use those buttons. And to flip my example on its head, what I've seen recently, and I won't name and shame them, but it's somebody that we have actually had on the show. And I went to their website today because I'm always interested in what they have to say. And there was something that was actually missing. I was reading their website, and I very often will share what they write. They're one of the people that I read regularly, and I like to share what they write because what they write makes sense on their blog. They're valuable content. And try as I might, and dig around as I might, I couldn't find a button that quickly and easily let me share a link to their blog post on, say, Twitter. And that is actually, to me, what should be the right use of these platforms is to allow, so say somebody comes to your blog, if they're a Twitter user and they have a big Twitter following, you want them to be able to easily and quickly link to your blog post out to their Twitter account or their Facebook page or whatever it might be, and promote your post and get you more traffic. That's really what, whenever anybody says, get into social media, that's the holy grail, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to find some, and actually, if these people are using WordPress, again, I know I talk a lot about WordPress, but it's just because it's easy to use. There are hundreds and hundreds of free plugins, and a plugin is a thing that you can download and install or get somebody to install on your website to add functionality. It's another one of the great things about WordPress. And you can download a plugin and you literally install it, which is easier than it sounds, and it sounds pretty easy. And instantly, every post on your blog can have a set of very nice, pretty buttons that say, share me on, and pick your website. You know, share me on Facebook, share me on Twitter, share me here, there, and everywhere. You know, and that, to me, is the correct use of social media buttons.
Mm.
So, you know, I mean, so you know, we're not down on social media buttons. We don't think that they're stupid and silly, but ones that take people away from your site just to another place that you possibly even have automatically reposted content, which would really be a bad experience for them. You know, if you are doing that in the wrong way, you know, that's not a good idea. But having them on your content, if you do write content, if you're a blogger and you write blog posts for your industry, for your marketplace, or whatever, your news or whatever, then having them so that people can easily share the content is a good use.
Love it. And this is something we're still working on with PreneurMarketing.com. If people go there right now, depending on when they're listening to the show, we don't have the full social share stuff on the site right now because it's in development. So I'm going to put my hand up and say we don't have that fully right now, and it's being worked on with a really cool plugin we're developing, which is going to be pretty sweet. But we do have at least some breakouts. So you'll see, takeaways from certain podcast episodes, quotables, bits and pieces, and we've got, things where we actually break that out and have a click to tweet button, so people can really easily tweet a snippet of a show or a particular blog post, and that's worked really, really well for us already.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty cool feature. When I saw that, when the design and then the implementation of that's pretty cool. And I've not seen that in many places before. But yeah, PreneurMarketing.com is a work in progress. We've got to be clear about that. So depending on when you're listening to this, you might go, hang on a minute.
They're saying one thing and not doing the other, and that's it's part of the development process.
But what's the important thing here is that what we love to do on the show, what's important to us to do on the show, is to do what we say we do before we tell you to do it. And so, if we are working our way through something, you might see that we've taken something off the site or added something on the site that we haven't talked about yet. And that's because we're trying something out. We're trying it out so that when we've got that data back, because, Pete loves his data, when we've got that data back, we can tell you what we're doing. We moved to PreneurMarketing.com away from PreneurMedia.tv because we'd made a decision, and we told you, this is why we made the decision. When we initially started it, that site's been running for as long as the podcast has been running, like 18 months. But the data told us, it's not giving us the return that we want, and we need to do something about it. And at that point, we let you guys know. And the same with all this stuff. So, Pete? Have we got any more? I mean, we're close to time on this one, and I think we've covered quite a few of the big issues. Have we got any more kind of quick tips we can give people for getting the most from social media?
No, I think we
things that we find are useful.
Look, I think at the end of the day, I think it comes down to just engaging and being yourself. But I would love people to, continue this conversation with us on these social media platforms. So, if you've got questions, and this is a perfect example and a perfect use of these sort of platforms, is, head over to Twitter. I'm at Preneur, Dom's at DGoucher. And let us know what other questions you have, and we'll continue this conversation in another episode of the podcast. So, head over to the blog, PreneurMarketing.com, go to the show notes, put some extra questions in, other, issues or controversial things you've read or things you're confused about, or, send us messages on Twitter, and we'll collate all those, and we'll, answer some of these in a future episode of the show.
Absolutely. I mean, that for us is why really we're on these platforms, is that it's interactive for us, and so absolutely reach out to us on Twitter, and the new blog over at PreneurMarketing.com. One thing I will say about that, as we are wrapping up, one of the things that hadn't made it across in the move is one of the things that we were getting actually the best feedback on, which was our little speak pipe, the audio message capability. We've really been enjoying including listeners' comments and feedback actually into the show. And we really want to keep doing that, folks. So at the moment, SpeakPipe is not integrated into PreneurMarketing.com. But if you do go there, you can still leave comments under the blog post. We'd love definitely to hear your feedback on this episode and all the other ones. And if there's something we missed or something, as Pete says, that's confusing you or that you want us to focus on a bit more, and we'll happily do some more content on this. But real soon now, we'll have that SpeakPipe up. And when we do drop us an audio note. Do, by all means ask your question or just let us know what you think of the show, because we'd love to feature you actually live on the show. Put that audio track on there.
Absolutely. So let's put a bow on it. Let's wrap this one up. I think we have a great drinking game in place for today's episode. If you want to go back and listen again and have a shot every time we mention PreneurMarketing.com, it could be a very cool drinking game for this episode, because we have mentioned it a lot. But one final thing I will mention about that is something we published last week, which of a lot of email response from and stuff like that, which has been great. A little ebook, completely free, no opt-in, just go and download it, called Never Break More Than One Law at the Same Time. And it's just a whole bunch of collections of the best pieces of advice that anyone has ever given the people of Reddit. It's a really cool 69-page ebook, completely downloadable. It's a PDF. Just click and download it. You can read it on the site as well. And it's got a whole bunch of really profound little pieces of advice that I really found interesting and had the team put together into this visually engaging ebook. So head over there and check it out.
And folks, it is actually there's some seriously good advice and some quite funny little advice snippets and quotes in there. Totally free. So definitely pop over to PreneurMarketing.com and grab that. Also, while you're there, don't forget, there is the regular competition that we run at PreneurMarketing.com/win, which is anything that we've got from recent authors and other people that have been guests on the show. So whenever you're listening to this, always pop across to PreneurMarketing.com/win to check out what you can win with a very simple competition to enter. And as always, thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully, as usual, we hope to have added value and given you some great tips and hints and stuff in this show. Do drop us a comment over on, I'll say it one more time, PreneurMarketing.com. And also, please, if you are subscribed to us on iTunes, jump across to iTunes and drop us a comment on there as well. So, Pete, I'll leave it to you to, as you say, put a bow on it. And folks, we'll see you all next week.
Sounds great, everyone. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you next week with interview with another great guest. So stick around for that one. It's going to be very exciting.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Gocher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at www.preneurmarketing.com or drop them a line via PreneurCast@preneurgroup.com.